The year was 1534, the midst of the Sengoku period, and the island Japan was fractured, split between regional lords known as daimyo, with a puppet government at its center. By the mid-16th century, a young man would assume his place as the new head of the Oda clan. This man would go on to end the ruling Ashikaga shogunate and bring much of the island under his control. Although he wouldn't live to see his grand ambition realized, his retainers, Toyotomi Hideyoshi and Tokugawa Ieyasu, would continue his dream and unite all of Japan. But the man who started it all would never be forgotten. And that man's name was Oda Nobunaga.
Hello people, I'm Tommy. As much as I would love to continue the discussion on medieval Japanese politics, we must discuss about modern Japanese politics, specifically about my opinion on the Pokemon games. While the last few years have been very rough on the mainline side of things, the spin-offs that we would get have been pretty good. But I think that there is one game, one that is a gold standard of Pokemon spin-offs, and the best game on the Nintendo DS. And that game is... Pokémon Conquest. Is a crossover game between Pokemon and the Nobunaga's Ambition series of games, a franchise that started out on computers that would eventually jump to consoles like the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. To show you my experience with Nobunaga's Ambition, I give you the story of Daimyo Big Ball, who was killed in battle immediately. Then his son, Daimyo Big Ball II, who trained his troops, lost all his money, and then died in battle immediately again. And that's Nobunaga's Ambition. Now, it's time to talk about a real man's game, Pokémon Conquest. I said in the past that this is my favorite game on the DS, and after replaying it at the start of this year, yeah, it's not even close, this game is phenomenal. But why is that? Why is this random Pokemon spin-off so good? Well, let's jump into the land of Ranzai and unify the region as we explore the majesty of Pokémon Conquest. The game starts off with an exposition on the region of Ranzai, a place with a very unique shape. There are 17 kingdoms, all that correlate to a different Pokemon type, and they're at war, as the one who unites the land of Ranzai will get to see the legendary Pokemon. And I wonder who that could be. You then get prompted to make your character, who is the warlord of the normal type kingdom of Aurora. You meet a girl named Oichi, who teaches you the basics of the game, and this is where we come to see that this is a strategy game. And I will get into the gameplay in excruciating detail soon, so let's stick with the story. Eventually, Aurora comes under attack by the goons of Hideyoshi of the Fire Kingdom of Ignis. After sending them packing, we train up for an assault on the kingdom, where Hideyoshi gets mollywopped and our strength grows. And now our hero knows what they must do. As they say their iconic line, it's time to Pokémon Conquest for the Nintendo DS this place. The Water Kingdom of Fontaine Falls, while the Grass Kingdom of Greenleaf introduces us to another gameplay mechanic. Unlike the previous kingdoms, where you simply have to beat the enemy team before the turn limit goes down, here you need to capture 3 flags placed around the field. And I'm going to be honest, when I played this game for the first time at the ripe old age of 12, I lost here, and didn't come back to this game for like 6 months after that. But once you know what you're doing, Greenleaf falls, and with that, you now have control over the southwest region of Ranzai. You push into the rest of western Ranzai, taking down the Electric Kingdom of Violet, where bolts fly down at random. The Bug Kingdom of Cresselia, where you hit Pokemon with these spheres called Pokemari Balls, which do insane damage. And the Fighting Kingdom of Pugilis, which is the most pathetically easy kingdom in the game. And with those kingdoms beneath our thumb, this is where we get news The feared conqueror, Lord Nobunaga, hasn't been slacking while we were taking over kingdoms, because although we have all of Western Ranzai, he has control over all of Eastern Ranzai. The only two kingdoms not under Nobunaga or your control is the Ground Kingdom of Terera, ruled by Shingen, and the Psychic Kingdom of Elugio, ruled by Kenshin. Taking down either of these warlords will bring both of them to your side, gaining Central Ranzai to your empire. Your avatar goes through their first warrior transformation, where you get more armor. The festivities, however, are cut short, where Lord Nobunaga makes his first appearance in front of us on top of a goddamn Zekrom. We are fucked. But not to worry, he's not here to kill us. He's just here to tell us that he's gonna kill us eventually. All good. But he should have killed us, because now we have a goddamn Gallade and Rhyperior on our side. We are invincible. So we jump into Eastern Ranzai, the Rock Kingdom of Kragspur, eroded. The Dark Kingdom of Yaksha, vanquished. The Poison Kingdom of Viperia, antidote. Id. The Flying Kingdom of Avia, I threaten to put them all on the no-fly list. Easy. Conquer. And all that remains is the northernmost part of Ranzai. These are Nobunaga's strongest and most loyal advisors. Lord Ieyasu of Velora wields the power of Agron, while his apprentice has the power of a Metagross. He should be the Lord of Velora, goddamn. But eventually, Velora falls and we fight Lady No of the Ghost Kingdom of Spectra, where this little flame gives you a random status element, and I've played through these games hundreds of times, and they are still annoying. Anyway, No is defeated, and we go to the Ice Kingdom of Nixtrum, and although the thought of an ice-beaming Lapras is scary, it's no problem for us. And after that battle, our Eevee begins to evolve, turning into the best evolution, because Sylveon doesn't exist yet. And with that, all that remains from Total Conquest is the capture of Dragnor. And can you take a wild guess on what type this is supposed to be? Nobunaga stands firm with his Zekrom, but Glaceon ain't having it and blows everyone in the battle away. And so, we did it. Ranzai is united and the legendary Pokemon will show itself. You know, that last fight did feel really anticlimactic. I wonder what happened to old Nobunaga anyway. Or fucked. This shit, right here, was the single most badass thing Child Tommy ever saw. You show this image to any guy, and he'll say, hell yeah. So Nobunaga assembles his strongest soldiers, and it's time for the true final battle. But before that, the legendary Pokemon speaks to us, tells us to bond with it. Okay, buddy. Now, we have the power of God on our side, so that shiny Rayquaza you got there, Nobunaga, ain't so special now, you fucking moron bitch! And with that, Nobunaga is defeated once and for all. Arceus departs, promising that they will meet us again in the future. The war ends, and we give the kingdoms back to their rightful owners, and with that, the credits roll. And so that was the first story of Pokémon Conquest. Now I know you might be saying, Tommy, that was a really short game. And right you are, the first story is short. But we're not done yet. Buckle up everyone, cause we're about to do this 37 more times. After you complete the main story of Pokémon Conquest, you find out that all that conquering you just did, that was pretty much just the tutorial. This is where the real game starts. So when you initially get to this screen, you're locked off from doing most of the game modes. 9 times out of 10, your first story will be Hideyoshi's, where you play as the beloved Fire Monkey trainer, and once again, unite Ranzai. And luckily, not every single story is you uniting all of Ranzai over and over again. The other categories are the Junior Warlords, collecting 100 Pokemon, recruit 40 warriors, Kenshin vs Shingen, Ranzai's greatest beauty, defeat Nobunaga, ninjas, not worth fighting over, and the true ending. But to be fair, even if the objective isn't to unite all of Ranzai, you're probably just gonna do it anyway. Now, we get to the point where I go in depth about the overworld gameplay, because it's a topic I am very knowledgeable about. So now, it's time to go from a simple strategy game to Tommy's kingdom management in order to become big, buff boys. Here we go. We start by playing Iyasu's story and conquering all of Ranzai. Believe me, in these story modes, uniting Ranzai is easy as hell. The reason we do this is because the main objective of Iyasu's story is to collect 100 Pokemon, which means that even if we unite all of Ranzai, the story doesn't end. So now, you're on a map where no one can take you over, and you have complete control over when to end it. So this is the point where we get busted. You're not going to attack with all the warlords and warriors you own each month, it's too much time and not worth it. But what you can do is delegate everyone to train and develop in the kingdoms they're in. What this does is make it so that your units get stronger and your kingdoms get access to more areas, like stronger Pokemon to fight, gold to collect, and increasing energy. So if you spam the next month button a couple times, you're gonna get strong as hell. My man Iyasu, who was forced to carry around this Lairon, was able to warrior transform, and now he's pulling up with a Registeel. And that's the biggest reason to do this, because every warlord and warrior in the game has a perfect link. This means that a specific Pokemon with a specific trainer can reach its strongest possible power. Also, I might as well address this, but when it comes to the terms warlord and warrior, the main difference is that a warlord has a unique design and their perfect link shows up on their portrait, while a warrior is just some schmuck that has no unique art at all. Every warlord, aka unique portrait person, has this thing called a warrior transformation, where if certain criteria are met with a Pokemon they have a perfect link with, they can transform and get stronger. To get these perfect links, you need to find a Pokemon in the wild, or insert a code if you're lazy. Don't worry, some of these Pokemon are bullshit, so no one will blame you, and then link with it by pressing the A button at the right time. Some warlords even have the ability to link with legendaries, like Kenshin linking with Mewtwo, and Shingen linking with Groudon. This is where one of my favorite parts of the game comes in, and that's the design of the warlords after transformation, because for the most part, they look like the Pokemon they have a perfect link with. And not in some disgusting way like in that Pokemon Reburst manga. If you didn't know this existed, I apologize that I'm the one to tell you about it. The warlords just decide to cosplay as their perfect link. Like, for example, Kotaro has a perfect link with Zoroark, so when he transforms, he gets the Zoroark hair. Kaiji gets the Terrakion head ornament. Aya is one of the most apparent, with her perfect link being Frostlass. And then there's our boy, Masanori. Look at this guy right here. The hair, the glasses. He's a gosh darn crook. And his perfect link is, of course, Crocodile. That's wonderful. The only warlords to have more than one transformation is your avatar, which makes sense, and Hideyoshi, who I can only assume is because of his Reshiram link. But Nobunaga gets 2 legendaries and only has a rank 2 transformation. So, oh well. And that's one of the major pieces of this game, getting your warlords to their peak performance and getting them stronger Pokemon. And here's the thing, when you do this in any story, it carries over to the rest of the game. So if you get Kai her incredibly busted Darmanitan and then play her story, she will demolish everything in her path. Now, I understand that some people may see this as a negative on the game, and that doing this makes it easier than it already is, and that is 100% correct, but I've 100%ed this game 3 separate times, so it's a major positive to do this and one of my favorite aspects of the game. But what about the other part of the game? I've been talking a lot about the Conquest, but what about the Pokemon? Well, there are 200 Pokemon from the first 5 generations in this game, and since they had to cut some of the cast, they only kept in the most recognizable faces, like Charizard, Pikachu, Mewtwo, and Armaldo. You know, the big boys. All these Pokemon get one move, and that one move can make or break a Pokemon's viability. Let's look at a 3-stage evolution like the Shinx line, for example. Shinx has the move Spark, a weak electric-type move that only hits one square in front of it, meaning it can only hit one Pokemon per turn. Shinx's evolution Luxio gets the move Discharge, which hits everything that surrounds it, giving Luxio the ability to hit all 6 enemy Pokemon at once if they are surrounded. But then the evolution Luxray gets Thunder, an incredibly strong electric-type move with low accuracy and only hits one Pokemon, and the Pokemon has to be 3 tiles away. This brings up the question of stats versus moves. Luxray is obviously stronger than Luxio, but does the stronger stats make up for losing the ability to hit multiple Pokemon at once? Well, that's up to what you're doing in the game. If you're conquering kingdoms, having the strongest Pokemon available is always a focus, so Luxray is a good choice, while dealing with crowd control of wild Pokemon might make Luxio the better option. But then there's moves that are just insane. Like I said earlier, Darmanitan is busted because he goes from a small Darumaka with a 1-square attack to a 7-square, 5-star Fire Blast. What a glow-up. But there is no greater discussion about viability among us Pokemon Conquest gurus than the Dragon Ragers. The Stage 1 Dragon types in Pokemon Conquest have access to the move Dragon Rage. Now, in main series Pokemon, Dragon Rage is a move that always does 40 damage, and you typically get access to this move near the beginning of the mid-game, and by that point it's not that good since Pokemon get more and more HP and can eat up at least one of these attacks. In Pokemon Conquest, this move hits 2 squares, still does 40 damage, and can be easily acquired at the start of most stories. Dragon Rage is such a strong boon in certain stories, such as Ranzai's Greatest Beauty, because you're not fighting a lot of kingdoms, and for the most part, Pokemon never go over 40 HP, so you've essentially got a Pokemon that can one-shot 2 enemies at a time. From my experience playing this game, these Stage 1 Dragon Ragers can be more useful than their fully evolved counterparts, as they are quite common throughout Ranzai, striking fear when you fight them, and striking gold when you get them to join you. And as you play through more stories, you see that certain warlords just aren't as good because their perfect links are terrible. I'll throw an example out there. This character right here is Gracia. She's got a perfect link with Gothitelle. This Pokemon has the move Future Sight, which hits 6 squares but does almost no damage, and it takes 2 turns for the move to hit. This Pokemon is unusable. So, for all of you who want to play this game for yourself, I recommend the implementation of the mechanical eviscerating torturing Armageddon Gigantic Robotic Orbital Super Stomper, also known as Metagross. Because if any unit in this game has the chance to get a Metagross, get them a goddamn Metagross. Now yes, this thing is a single square attacker, but Metagross is one of the best single square attackers in the game. So when you give little Gracia her very own mechanical monstrosity, her story suddenly becomes a lot easier. And as you complete more stories, get every perfect link on all your warlords and transform them, you'll unlock the final story, the 2 Heroes of Ranzai. The plot is simple. All of the warlords remember how you and Nobunaga completely wiped out every single army in Ranzai. So they decide, hey, how about instead of you and Nobunaga being enemies, let's see if you can work together and defeat us. Essentially, you've got these 2 powerhouses who already kicked ass throughout all of Ranzai, and this time they're working together. Although I make it sound easy, it is the hardest story in the game, with every warlord having fully evolved Pokemon. But if you've dedicated a fraction of your life to this game like I did, it's child's play. As you push towards Dragnor, you'll eventually get your rank 3 warrior transformation, and you get to see Arceus once again, where you can link with the god of Pokemon permanently. This also lets you permanently get the shiny Rayquaza on Nobunaga if you got all the other legendary Pokemon in the game. And with that, you kick ass, and this time you get a slideshow of all the warlords in the game with their perfect links. So, the question stands, is Pokemon Conquest worth playing? Absolutely. It still stands as my favorite DS game of all time. If it weren't for this game introducing me to strategy games of this type, I might have never discovered my love for my favorite franchise of all time, Fire Emblem. And hey, if you haven't touched a strategy game in your life, maybe use this as a baby's first. Now, a big factor in why I say this game is so easy is because I've dedicated hundreds of hours to this game. I don't typically say this because I'm gonna be honest, I suck at a lot of video games, but Pokemon Conquest is up there with Half-Life and Mario Galaxy as games I know like the back of my hand. I am so knowledgeable about this game that the challenge is practically non-existent to me. But maybe you might find a nice challenge with it, and you might get stuck in Greenleaf like I did when I first picked up this game. To me, Pokemon Conquest is easily Pokemon's greatest spin-off and the best game on the Nintendo DS. But unfortunately, due to the time it was released, June 18th, 2012 here in North America, there was already a new handheld on the market. And sure, that handheld was the greatest console in gaming history and could play original DS games, but people didn't want to play some old school DS game, and if they did, it was going to be a major franchise like Pokemon Black 2 White 2, which also released in 2012. So due to poor sales, this game is not that cheap nowadays.
And that is Pokemon Conquest, a game I talked about, so now I can transition into talking about the greatest gaming purchase in history, because you see, back in 2015, I would walk into a GameStop, and I would purchase Pokemon Conquest, Pokemon Black 2, Pokemon Soul Silver, Pokemon Blue Rescue Team, and Yokai Watch. I spent $75 on that purchase. I'm a goddamn psychic.